I think the most important thing about being a utilitarian is that you judge actions in accordance with their consequences. Things are not just right or wrong in themselves, irrespective of the difference they make in the world. And I think that it's important that we make a difference in the world and not that we stick by some abstract principle which might say, for example, always tell the truth, but then might have disastrous consequences for everyone. And I see no point in sticking by a principle without paying attention to the consequences of what you're doing. So that's the first and most important aspect for me of being a utilitarian.
The utilitarian movement was founded in the late 18th century by the English philosopher Jeremy Bentham. He came from a family of lawyers and was trained to be a lawyer, but he didn't practice the profession. Instead, he dedicated himself to the reform of the British legal system and social policy. Bentham's central proposal was deceptively simple. He wrote, "Nature has placed mankind under the governance of two sovereign masters, pain and pleasure. It is for them alone to point out what we ought to do." Bentham proposed designing all laws and social policies with one goal: maximize the amount of pleasure in society and minimize the amount of pain. Show no favoritism to individuals, but seek only to bring about the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Philosopher Ross Harrison has written a book about Bentham.
The importance of Bentham is he really worked out a utilitarian theory. So it wasn't just the starting point, but you developed what that actually was and then applied it to lots of different areas. I mean, you've got a psychological theory, you've got a value theory, you put them together, you get a theory of politics, of law, of society. And it's that whole development that makes Bentham important.
Bentham was a child of the Enlightenment. Although he dealt with emotionally charged issues, he proposed resolving them entirely through reason. He totally opposed maintaining policies simply on the grounds of custom or traditional authority.
The big Enlightenment thing as a questioning operation is to say, well, why? What justifies? At what point? I mean, why are these the right things to do? They are the things that have happened. They've got custom. But if we ask for reason rather than custom, why we should do these things, then we've got to think of a new way of justifying or establishing them. And we've got to, as it were, produce straight new foundations, not take authority, not take the facts written in some book, sacred or otherwise. I mean, it might be Aristotle, it might be the Bible. Not take authority, not take the book, not take the custom.
The second great figure in the utilitarian movement was the 19th century English philosopher John Stuart Mill. Mill's father was a friend and follower of Bentham, and he put his son through a rigorous education, starting with Greek at age 3, Latin at age 7, and a strong dose of utilitarian theory.
And when Mill was a young man, he got together some like-minded people, and they all believed very strongly in Bentham, and they were all very young men trying to solve the world. And they met together in Bentham's house. James Mill lived next door, and they met in Bentham's house, and they were a little society promoting Bentham's ideas. They called themselves the Utilitarians.
But at the age of 20, Mill suffered a nervous breakdown. As he later wrote, "The habit of analysis has a tendency to wear away the feelings." As he recovered, he set about writing the balance in his life.
Mill, I think throughout his life, was a very open character. He wanted to combine lots of different kinds of thought. He was putting together the best of the 18th century, the best of the 19th century. So he's a compromising thinker. And in respect to, if you could sort of press it on to the mental crisis, the thought if I just try to aim at the greatest happiness, the greatest number, at least as conceived by Bentham, I myself am not going to be happy. There's more to life than that. And as he conceived it, the more to life was poetry.
As he recovered, Mill also diverged from the ideas of Bentham. For Bentham, there was only one standard of value. Whether it's called pleasure, happiness, or utility, it can be quantified. Mill complicates the picture by arguing that there are higher and lower pleasures. Quality matters. In his words, it is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. Through the years, many philosophers have been attracted to the basic idea of utilitarianism, to weigh the good against the bad. But they've looked for ways to add finesse to Bentham's simple quantitative approach.
I find that very hard to answer as to whether I'm a utilitarian. If you take traditional definitions of utilitarianism, that all that matters is pleasure and the absence of pain, no, I'm certainly not a utilitarian. But utilitarians have characteristically responded to criticism, not by rejecting criticisms, but by embracing them with a kind of bear hug, by making their theory more and more complex to accommodate the different criticisms that are made. If you make consequentialism sufficiently pluralistic and still call it utilitarianism, then you could say that I was a utilitarian.
In most people's view, finding any objective measure of pleasure and pain is a difficult problem. The problem becomes vastly more difficult when you try to compare one person's pleasures or pains with those of another.
There certainly is a problem about comparing the happiness of different people. It, I think, would be a bit absurd to say that my holiday in Italy made me 2.54 times as happy as your holiday in Ireland made you. We can't make precise interpersonal comparisons, but still I think, as any parent knows, you can sometimes, again, make rough and ready comparisons. A parent who has to decide whether to spend some money on giving one child a holiday or sending another child to a better school does, in fact, make some kind of intuitive comparison about which will matter more in the life of the particular person. We may often get it wrong. We certainly can't do it precisely. But I think, again, it's too naive to think that we can't do it at all, which is what the strong case against utilitarianism sometimes suggests.